Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Chen and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
Awesome. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of BrandBusters. We have a treat for you guys today. We have Ryan Chen, who is one of the co-founders of Neuro, the leading functional and mint company that appeared on Shark Tank and is in 10,000 retail stores nationwide and have sold over 100 million pieces and counting. So we're personally inspired by the brand. I think James is actually using the product while we record this podcast now.
Right now, mints dissolving in mouth, represent.
I just saw you pop one in. That's amazing. Yep. Thank you.
So we're really pumped to have Ryan here, especially given kind of their journey of how they've grown the brand and some interesting ways and tactics and channels that they've grown the brand. So excited to have you here, Ryan. Thanks for spending the time with us. I'm sure our audience is going to learn a ton from you today.
Yeah, super stoped to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're gonna jump right. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No,
we're gonna rip. We're gonna rip. I'm got my caffeine and my focus going right now. So Ryan, like the trend. There's a lot of trends that we've noticed since we've been doing this over the last plus year with founders, co-founders. The kind of drive to found a company typically starts from like some personal need not being met or addressed by the market. I see there's a lot of products kind of like in the nootropic category space. But I mean, tell us about, Neuro's story, like what need wasn't being met for you or Kent, and why did you, stand up this concept?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it kind of really stems from like our background. We, Kent's my best friend from college. We met half a lifetime ago, and we were friends long before we started this company together. But it really kind of started for our love of, athletics and maximizing our athletic careers through supplementation, and it was always in pill form. You had energy drinks like Red Bull, Monster, Rockstar, now Celsius, but there wasn't like a very clean way of getting products or like supplements that was unless it was in pill form. So what basically happened was we were on a scuba diving trip. This was in 2014, and we were just finishing college, and we had a Groupon offer, and Kent's always down to do some new adventures, so we hopped on, did some scuba diving, and we realized that taking pills in public wasn't the best look. So thought that if we could take what's in these pills and make it a little bit more approachable, accessible, like gum and mints, that was an idea that could really solve that issue. So one of the things that we had early on was really trying to find a manufacturer and willing to take us on.
That's great. And when you're looking at manufacturers, I guess one of our listener base kind of core are people that are kind of early startup founders. How do you go about that process? Like selecting, vetting manufacturers, like what did you guys look for to determine whether they are a right fit for you?
Especially with a concept too. So like taking that idea and then vetting manufacturers and getting prototypes made. How did you think about that process?
Yeah, definitely. It was like a new concept of putting, health and wellness into a piece of gum that's just normally for breath freshening, right? So, we scoured Google to find different manufacturers in the States, and you'd be surprised how many rejections you get or how many emails get bounced back, because I think a lot of people didn't want to take on a new idea. And we were really lucky that we found a manufacturer that at the time was kind of a small mom and pop shop that was like willing to kind of take on that challenge. So, Kent was a neuroscience degree. I was chemistry. Never thought that we'd be using those degrees. I ended up at Hulu doing data. Kent was at Sony Music, and he's at heart a true amazing creative, and he's like a world famous muralist. But we did such different career paths from what we were studying. But then when we came to Neuro and doing NeuroGum, we kind of leaned into like what we were passionate about. And so I guess finding the manufacturer was the tricky part. For us, we kind of only had one solution, but I think with other products usually you can have a couple more. But we got lucky with ours, and it's been 9 years running.
Man, so you've been around 9 years. You guys are the first set of co-founders we've had on the podcast.
Cool.
So I guess for you, I see you guys go way back, but like, what have been the benefits? Obviously, I'm sure it's good to have someone in the trenches with you, and also some of the hurdles with having kind of, two heads of the dragon, if you will, in terms of driving Neuro.
Yeah, I think yeah, we get this question a lot in terms of like how to, what is it like to start a company with your best friend? Like I consider Kent like a brother. So, we the biggest part about starting a company, I think, is trust. And I think you can't get very far unless you trust your partner. And we kind of made it a point that, our friendship comes first, business comes second. And then in turn, like we put the team first, over profit or gain. So I think in terms of the culture that we built, we really want to look out for each other. But it really starts with like kind of me and Kent's friendship. And I think I've heard horror stories about people, over the years, and it breaks up friendships. I think it strengthened ours. And like I said, we were friends like, for over half a lifetime now. And so yeah, I think it's two heads of a dragon is an interesting thing because we actually are very different in terms of like our skill set. Kent's very creative, he's very execution oriented. And I think I'm a little bit more on the data oriented side given my analytics background. And then then at the same time I love talking to people and I love forming partnerships. And it's kind of how my role evolved from co-founder CFO to now kind of chief business officer and just developing cool collaborations.
That's great. At any point when you guys were early on, or if there was ever any difficulties, is there anything that kind of tested that friendship first mentality, or has it been, pretty easygoing
I mean, it's a
most of the
long
way?
draw. It was never like like we kind of joke around. It's like our overnight success took like basically like 10 years, right? And
Always the case.
the first year and a half, like I was still working at Hulu. Kent was like, I think in the beginning of it, like kind of living on my couch, and he was working at a music studio, and then found success as like a children's book artist, and he did
No
an
way.
amazing thing with the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, and then be like his mural career kind of really just took off. And so the first year and a half, like we had full-time jobs, and then Neurogun was really like our passion, our our baby, but we didn't have the means to kind of just go full time right away. We were, we had rent to pay, and we had, we were in our mid 20s where we were like, we weren't, we were sure of it, but we were unsure of like, can we go full time? And so it wasn't until year two where like, we had this revenue goal in mind. I think a year or two, we're like, if we hit 750K or something, that's enough to where we can quit our jobs, be on like a ramen budget and just like kind of go from there. And luckily at the time, Tyler, who was Kent's roommate, ended up being our first employee. He's still with us. He's our COO. And it was just like the three of us and then five of us. And I think between warehouse and everything, like we're probably around 60 people.
That's
But
crazy.
yeah, it was a long time. And I think in terms of like, did we butt heads? It was more like just we both were very resilient people, and we just knew that we couldn't give up. And yeah, we just kept going, still at
And
it.
kind of drawing on that, I mean, you guys, I mean, kind of looking into you ahead of the conversation. I mean, you're both athletes. Kind of, you also had like personal hobbies. Like, I think you're a pilot, right? Or you're able to you're able to fly.
Yeah,
Kent's a
yeah,
muralist. Like,
Yeah.
based
yeah.
on your just drawing from your friendship, but even like some of your extracurriculars, how do you feel like that stuff has helped set you up and kind of build that? Because starting a company is not easy. There's a lot of
Yeah.
hardship. There's a lot of things around the corner that you can't see and get blindsided by. So how do you draw on those other experiences and extracurriculars to kind of really build that fortitude?
Yeah, I think like Neuro's kind of mantra is like finding balance, right? Like supplementation and how does it fit into your life? And that's something that we always try to preach. So if it's all work, 100% work, 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 like you're gonna get burnt out. Like they're not gonna last the 9 years. So for me, I was, very curious about different things. I've always wanted to be a pilot. I went through a really crazy, life-changing accident when I was 19. I was actually paralyzed from the waist down from a snowboarding accident. So I was living with Kent the summer before my sophomore year, and I got injured my sophomore year going off like a 30-foot jump out in Big Bear, California, and I shattered my back and
Ugh.
was paralyzed instantly and pulled out of school. And then the next 2 years was like in and out of, school, rehab, surgery. And it
Ugh.
was the rock bottom for me. And, Kent was there kind of supporting me and visiting me. And I think like at that point for me and for Kent to witness that, we were like, life is super short. You can't just focus on one thing and expect to live a balanced and a fulfilling life. So, I know how important art is to Kent. And so, he does, murals to satisfy that. He's just so creative. He's so talented at that. And for me, I like, traveling. I like spending time with friends. Me and Kent have a lot of the same group of friends, but we travel a lot together. And I think it's important to do that so you don't burn out. That's just, I think, full stop. Like you're not going to be able to last a long game, because entrepreneurship it's not like a 1 year thing. It's kind of a journey.
It's a marathon, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you got to
100%.
pay. And there's always more than enough work to do. You could fill your time constantly with more work that needs to be done as an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
When Sean and I worked together, one of the analogies we'd always referred to was kind of like deposits versus withdrawals. And whether you're starting a company or it's like a relationship, whether romantic or platonic, it's almost like a bank balance, if you will, right? So if you keep withdrawing, you'll have insufficient funds at one point. So if you're not tending to your own tank, you're going to burn out, you're going to collapse there. If you're not tending to your partner, business partner, romantic partner, it's the same thing. You can't keep asking withdrawing. You have to kind of build into that as well.
Yeah.
So you have something to draw from.
100%.
So you guys launched kind of the initial product, kind of the Neuro Focus gum and mints. I know you guys have expanded into other areas like sleep and calm. What kind of is your process of kind of validating that those are areas that your consumers want, or that there are opportunity areas there? How do you guys do consumer research at a company like yours?
Yeah, I think for us it was like, Neuro being the name, it like really starts with the mind. So we really wanted to find products, ingredients that are focused around that. Like we would never go into something like, I don't know, like creatine or like hangover. It's like really about like performance, to some degree. And we have a memory and focus product that's just been amazing. And we have clinical trials on the ingredient, which is like a form of ginseng called Cereboost. And it's like 26 clinical studies of how it improves working memory. So it's like we'll identify certain ingredients, or R&D team would kind of come to us with like some ideas. And then we then try to circle around and say like, hey, does this fit into our mission and vision? Because if it's like an amazing product, but doesn't fit with that, like if it's like a creatine or something, we're like, maybe not creatine gum, but definitely something with like, ginseng. And, there's so much research with caffeine and L-theanine and that synergy together. And that was really the basis of the product. And it still, makes majority of the sales for the business.
Yeah, that's great. When you launch new products, do you guys try to use your existing user base to trial it, or how do you get that early feedback loop?
Now we do. In the beginning, it was like it wasn't the case, but and in some ways, actually, there was a feedback loop because we launched the product on Indiegogo, so kind of like a Kickstarter crowdfunding, and like we knew that the product worked. We knew that we thought it was a good idea, but did other people, right? And I think we hit our goal in like something like 3 or 4 days. The Reddit community really rallied behind us. And then got picked up, like, Dr. Oz did a segment on it, Time magazine, and then we were like, wow, this is something. Like maybe caffeine, L-theanine gum, energy gum is the thing. And then focus really became a big part of that element too. So yeah, I think just developing new products is a long process. Like the sleep one took, I think, a little over a year. Memory and focus, same thing. So when something comes out, there's definitely a lot of thought behind it.
Well, I want to speak to the product because I think one thing I try to really take, I guess, be intentional about is anyone that we invite onto this podcast. Like if I'm not, our first guests are actually brands that people we either worked with, knew, or like products I loved and used, and came across you guys. And I can say like pre-workout has been such a crutch for me. I'm not a big coffee guy. But the thing is, obviously, there's high stim, there's a beta alanine, which makes your face tingle. It can kind of bloat you. It's like a lot of liquid.
Yeah.
So like I love, just for like listeners, if you haven't tried Neuro or wonder why, to leverage like energy and focus mints, even if you're very active, I can say there's a sharpness and it doesn't kind of crash your whole system where you have this polarizing swing of energy, and you can really like dial in on just like a small dose. So I think that's been I love what you guys kind of brought to market there, because I do think that's a missed need. Like a lot of people don't like coffee and the cream, or they might be lactose intolerant. Pre-workout is too much and overkill. And again, you have a lot of, if you're cardio
And a lot of
oriented-
weird ingredients, and you're like, why is this like foamy and
supplemental
red?
ingredients, like proprietary blend. It's like, what am I putting in my body? So I love that you guys did your homework and your backgrounds, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, we really try to keep it clean. I think same to your point, we kind of laugh about proprietary blends, because like they put anything in there and just call it a proprietary blend. But for us, like, we took a page out of RX Bar, and shout out to Jared Smith, who's one of the co-founders of RX Bar. They really kind of changed that packaging game, where they just like, hey, we have clean ingredients, like that's our pride and joy, let's put that on the front. And we took a page out of their book, and Jared's a friend and an investor into Neuro, which is really cool. But we gained a lot of inspiration from that, and I think we got nothing to hide. We put the ingredients in the front that work, that are the actives, and we try to keep it simple. And to your point, James, like it's great for pre-workout, because you're not drinking energy drink with Red Bull. I think it's like 30 plus grams of sugar. It's a lot of sugar. You're gonna peak on the sugar, and then you're gonna crash on it later. It's not from the caffeine as much as it is from the sugar, and then you're not kind of sloshing around different amounts of liquid in your stomach. So yeah, I think it's in terms of performance and in terms of bioavailability, you're absorbing the active ingredients, sometimes up to 5 times faster than if you were to ingest it in your stomach.
Yeah. So you guys also, I love a couple of the trends here. You first co-founders. I think you're the second brand that we've had that's actually appeared on Shark Tank. So
Cool.
Brooks Powell and Cheers, they were
yeah.
as well. Talk about that experience. You guys actually got an offer and turned down Kevin O'Leary on that, Mr. Wonderful himself, I believe. So
And
talk
Robert too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 2 offers. Yeah, actually, yeah, I know. Cheers is a great brand, and I think there's a whole Facebook group that is called the Shark Tank alums, and there's like a whole community of people who are on Shark Tank, and it's we all exchange notes. But it's a super supportive community. But I would say it was probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life. Like, I didn't want to be an internet meme. I didn't want to, like come across as, we just wanted to represent the brand as best as we could. And this was, we shot September 2019. So to give you context, we shot 2019. They don't tell you if you're going to air until like, I think 3 weeks out or something. And then obviously the world shut down March 2020 with COVID. And we were like, whoa, what's going to happen? And then, find out that we're going to air sometime mid-April 2020. And so the world was kind of like watching, and yeah, we had our best month at the time through Shark Tank, and momentum that I think Joe Rogan started to talk about the product organically. We just never paid him to do that. We're just a fan. And yeah, those 2 big things kind of like what was a big catalyst for us, 2020.
When you guys went on to Shark Tank, did you guys have an intention of trying to get a deal or accepting a deal, or did you have a game plan going in, or some people go on and just try to get exposure and then leverage that? Like, how did you think about it when you were going on, like the strategy?
Yeah, I can give you some like, I think some stat was like 20 or 30,000 companies apply every season to get on, and then 1,000 get down to producer interviews and like videos, which is like, like the next step. And out of 1,000, they invite something like 140 to actually go onto studio, do the hair, makeup, do the producer, like, and shoot it. And so you're in front of the shark shooting it. And out of the 140, I think only like 90 air. So just because you shoot it on set doesn't mean it's actually gonna air. So it's like, I think like a little over, like 60% chance that you're gonna air. And the probability of you airing is higher if you take a deal on camera. And so it's like, we knew going in that like we wanted to get the valuation of like, hey, 15 million was our last valuation back then. Like, let's stick with that. And I think a lot of people knew that like going on Shark Tank, you're going to get a lower valuation, but the possibility of getting the exposure, all that stuff. But Kent and I knew that 10 was going to be like the absolute floor or something, I think. And we were willing to just turn down the deals that we got. So we got 2 offers. I think they were like, I think Roberts was like $1 million for like 20%. I think would have put us at like 5, and then we're just like, we can't do that. We're just like, can we go up? And luckily, Kent and I speak Japanese, so we're like kind of speaking Japanese a little bit, trying to figure it out. But what you see on camera is like you see 7 minutes, right? I think even with the commercial break, we were there for like an hour 45 minutes,
That's
and it's
crazy.
like a blur because it's almost like this podcast. It's like you get into a rhythm, you get into a routine, and kind of just time flies by. And same thing there. Like once all the cameras are like up, you don't even notice them. They're just so well hidden, and it actually feels like you're just having a conversation with the sharks. And yeah, like at the very end, we had the offers, and we were just like, like that's just too low. Like we can't do that. And we knew going into it that you had a higher probability of airing if you say yes. But we weren't just going to say yes and then try to kill it on the back end on due diligence. We just didn't feel like that was, morally like the right thing to do. But so we knew that we had less of a chance to air, but I think they resonated with the story, and we still got the exposure. So it was a win-win because now our valuation's higher than that. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. What kind of lift did you guys see right after that? I know when we talked to Brooks Powell from Cheers, he said if he could do it all over again, if they said that he had to pay money to go on to get his episode to air, he's like, I absolutely would have paid them to go on because it was that instrumental for launching his business. I think it was worth like a few million in revenue pretty quickly for him.
Okay, yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think we had like maybe 1 million in sales within maybe that first like 2 weeks, and it tapers
It's
off pretty
wild.
quick, right? You
Yeah.
get that
Yeah.
first bump, but I think what comes after is just as good because then you can use these assets, and then you now it's like it opens up these doors because you're like, hey, we're a Shark Tank brand, and
Yeah.
people are always curious about Shark Tank brand. So it opened up the doors like in terms of conversations with buyers at places like CVS or like at the time we weren't even in Whole Foods, and we were just talking about Whole Foods. We just got into an airline at JetBlue Airlines right before we had air. So it opened up these conversational pieces. And I don't know. We always joke like if we got $1 for every time somebody was like, "Hey, oh, that's a good idea. You guys should go on Shark Tank." I was like, I think we would have made at least a couple $1,000s. So many people like love that show, and it's kind of become like an American staple. So I'm glad I did it.
That's awesome.
Like at the beginning, I was like very hesitant, and Kent's like, "No, we just got to do it, man. Like it's gonna be good." And I was like, "All right."
That's
I
amazing.
mean, you guys, I've watched my share of Shark Tank episodes, and you guys, I mean, you remain poised when you were turning them down. Like I've seen so many. It's not a knock. I would be probably, my mind would be spinning if I had offers and I had to decide like on the spot, like putting the gun to my head on that. But like you guys remain so poised, and again, in terms of what aired in the episode, like it's very like clear. Like you guys held to your principles on it. So I think it was just like very admirable because I've seen so many people just like waffle, fall over each other, and then just like really enter bad negotiation at that point. So
Yeah, I think we knew it's like, hey, this is the absolute floor. Like we will not like even if it was like like $1 shirts. Like let's just like that's like our floor.
Hold to it.
And we had decided that going into it, and if we got the valuation even at close to 15 or around 10, like we would have considered it, right? And we were looking at different mechanisms like during the negotiation process of like, hey, like maybe we could do is like not that, but maybe some advisory, but to get us to that valuation. But at the end of the day, like what aired was like a very short segment of it. And ultimately, like then you go, if you take a deal on camera, then it goes into due diligence. And I've heard of processes from friends companies that took like 3 to 6 months post, right? Yeah, it takes a long time. It's like you're going through a normal like due diligence process.
That's crazy. So you talked about it being on Shark Tank being helpful with retail buyers and getting in. Now you guys are in over 10,000 stores. What was that process like? Because I know you started in a direct to consumer and on Amazon, and then ventured into retail. How's that process been, and any lessons that you've learned, either from going into retailers too quickly, or things that you would have done differently, or things that have gone well beyond your wildest expectation?
Yeah, I think like just to paint some context, like majority of the business is still e-commerce, right? So Amazon, TikTok, or website. So retail makes up a pretty small percentage of the business, even though we're in quite a lot of doors. But what we see is that it's a lot more consistent if you can crack that code. So CVS for us is a very consistent business. Whole Foods has become very consistent. Some of the retailers that didn't work out for us, whereas like something like Walmart, we're just like you're getting lost in terms of placement. So like instead of us being in like a checkout counter or like at Whole Foods, like we're in the health like wellness section, and then in a
Yeah.
lot of stores we're at checkout lane. CVS, we're in the pharmacy for like memory focus area. Like we were in specific places that we could target. In Walmart, we're just in the gum and candy aisle. So you're
Oh,
gonna get mixed up with everything in Mars and Wrigley, and we like didn't want that placement. And I think we were just like, well, maybe we should give it a shot. And we did, and it wasn't the right move. We decided to pull out of Walmart. It was
yeah.
just more expensive to service it than like the money that we were making. So a lot of people don't choose to leave, but we elected to get out and then kind of save our chips for things that are more profitable that we could focus on velocity. So, you know, the channels that work really well for us, natural foods. So Sprouts, Whole Foods, incredible channels for us. Erewhon in LA, if you know, is a great channel for
Right.
us. I think we have like the #1 calm product there. Their mints. And CVS has been growing too, and we're going to do C-store next year. So convenience stores
Oh, that's
is
great.
going to be a big push for us as well.
Yeah, and I think that's just something you said that's a good lesson for founders out there is making sure the retailer and even the placement within that retailer is the right fit for your brand. Like I see a lot of
100%.
early stage founders, and I've been guilty of it too, running brands in the past. Like you go in because you're enamored by the doors or the distribution, but you don't
Yeah,
always view it through the lens of, is it the right strategic choice? If it's placed in this aisle, or is anybody ever going to discover me or find me there?
yeah,
So I think it's just a good lesson of how people should think about it, because it's a pitfall I see a lot of early stage founders make going into retail, because they're excited that a buyer will take them. They don't always then
100%.
think of, I got to move it off the shelf and drive velocity after I'm in, which is the
100%.
hardest part.
I think we're guilty of it too. We were enamored, like CVS was our first thing, like first big retailer, and then we got into a bunch. Walmart was like, I think the big learning lesson that we were like, whoa, we just didn't have the brand awareness within a Walmart consumer that they could have gone to that candy gum section and sought us out, right? It was like for somebody who hasn't heard of us, like to look at our packaging and be like, boom, okay, like I've never heard of this, but I'm willing to try it, or maybe I've overheard
Yeah.
it from, Rogan or Shark Tank. Like maybe I can give this a try. Like we just weren't in the right placement, but
Yeah.
we were enamored by the doors. We're like, I don't know, 4,000 doors. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it. But it ended up, costing us more money to
Yeah.
bring that back and get the inventory back. And it worked out because like our e-commerce business was skyrocketing. So the inventory we got back from Walmart, we sold off
That's
really
great.
quickly. So, but we got lucky. I think some other brands, it's not right. Like if you don't have,
Yeah, if you can't
don't
get
have
the
other
inventory back, or you can't repurpose it, or if it's close to
exactly,
expiry, like you can really
yeah,
take a
it's
bath
gone. Yeah,
on that
I
investment.
think, I think omni-channel approach is really important, but just doing it where you're not stretching yourselves too thin.
One channel I see emerging brands try to leverage to like break into retail is like trade shows, like Expo West. These others, they're very expensive to do. I mean, what is your take? What was Neuro's experience with trade shows? What advice would you give to founders that are like trying to figure out, hey, do we want to shell out 20, 30, if not more, $1,000 just on the booth, and then you talk about the sampling. I mean, it could be like a 50K plus investment, if not more, easily.
Easy.
So I mean, what's your advice there?
I have a lot of friends who've had booths at Expo West and they said it was worth it. And I've had others that were like, oh, like, it's just expensive. But I've had a lot of brands that have done it like 1 or 2 times and they're like, I don't need to do it the third or fourth time. Like I got what I needed that first or second time. If you have the cash to do it and then do it right, I think for a newer brand, you do get the eyeballs from the buyers, from investors. I think it's great. We never done Expo West as like a booth, but we go there every year just to walk around. We hand out samples. We see a lot of familiar like faces and friends. We've done the KHE UNFI shows. This past year we did NACS through one of our investors and partners. And so like, yeah, my experience though with Expo West, if you're asking that about Expo West specifically, I've had a lot of friends that found a lot of success in it, but it is, I think minimum, about 50K if you're going to do the booth and all of that, right? Not just like buy the booth space and then not have enough money to make it look nice. So
yeah, because you're competing against I mean, thousands of retailers. If you haven't been, it's a complete zoo.
huge.
It's amazing, but it is
I
daunting
love
to
it.
undertake.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah,
the Super
If you
Bowl.
like discovering brands, it's very fun to go to and walk around.
Yeah,
I think Expo West is really cool because you kind of have this crystal ball of like what the foresight is going to look like in terms of what food and bev,
Yeah.
the industry is going to evolve into. So I remember going there like years ago, like 8 years ago, and it's like alt milk was like just on the rise, right? Like, and and then yeah, a couple of years later, then it's all over, and then you have your gluten-free rise, you had CBD, which quickly died out
Yeah.
in my opinion.
yeah.
So like you see all these trends that aren't fully trends yet, but you see like what the trendsetters might be.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So you guys, or go ahead, James.
No, I was just going to say on the trends front, we're seeing a lot of people double down on TikTok right now, influencers, celebrity-backed brands. You guys obviously had some exposure with Rogan, but Steve Aoki as well. Like, how do you go about like celebrity selection? Like, how should brands think about that in terms of like who are the right celebrities to kind of like model or support the brand, and like how is it not just how does it seem authentic to your consumer base and also grow as well?
That's a great question. Yeah, so Apollo Ono, 8-time Olympic medalist, was like an early friend and investor, and we met, when Kent was training out with like the Olympic judo team. I was training with the Paralympic team, and we met him through a mutual friend, Chen, who's amazing, who started Gold House, which is an incredible nonprofit, and and he was authentic because he loved the product. Apollo's like, I actually use this. Like, I want to know more. Steve was the same thing. Like, he loved the product and then eventually became an investor and an advocate. I think when you're looking for celebrities, you have to look for not just the name, but if they genuinely use it, right? Like, you don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to pay you X, and most startups don't have dollar X. They pay you in dollar like or Y% equity, right? And that's going to be very expensive if they're not going to be talking about the product authentically. And another person we brought on was Dave Grutman. He's like, huge in Miami in terms of like owning that nightlife space, understanding hospitality. So, his business to Live Nation, and they partner on a bunch of deals. So like Dave genuinely liked the product. He actually liked the sleep product a lot, and he was like, I actually use this product all the time for the energy. And so like my advice for startups that want to go down that celebrity route and get that kind of maybe clout is like sample as much as you can and see who comes back asking for more, because those are the advocates that are going to like,
Yeah.
be your brand ambassadors, right? And I think I've seen sometimes people bring on celebrity partners because it's a big name. They don't even use the product, or they're not, there's a million other things they're involved in, and it just falls to the wayside. And then you have, this celebrity, but they sit dead on your cap table. And so that's my advice, is like, we were really selective in that process. Like, we just had to make sure that they were fans of the product, and we sample it a lot. Like, a lot of celebrities, kind of like Devin Booker from the NBA, I think Freddie Freeman from Dodgers, like they try the product, they love it. And it's like, okay, well then the next step is like, okay, can we do some type of, commercial or maybe a collaboration or social media activation, or maybe even talk about equity.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys, I know you have obviously a big TikTok and influencer program and sell a lot on Amazon, your own website, and on the TikTok shops. What gets you most excited beyond just your typical, Amazon AdWords or Meta ad spend or Google AdWords? If you could spend like your next dollar that you're most excited about on marketing tactics or marketing channels, where would you spend it, and what gets you excited for the next year?
Yeah, I think TikTok's been huge. I think we were at one point the second largest brand on TikTok, and then now it's like an inventory issue for us, right? And like I was telling you guys before the podcast, like we're really excited because we're going to be on the TikTok homepage for TikTok Shop December 18th to the 22nd. TikTok's activating us at Times Square all over New York City. But we'll be on the homepage for 5 days, and it's going to be mega. So Steve Aoki is going to help with the live. We're going to do something with Patty, the scuba diving organization. So full circle there. Like, we partnered. We're the second largest donor for Patty Aware, which is their nonprofit for ocean conservation. And they're a $1 billion company. They got 29 million scuba divers around the world. And there's so many cool activations. Young the Giant, they're good friends of mine. They're one of the biggest indie rock bands, and they're helping us out, kind of promote TikTok new arrival. So we're launching our new spearmint and wintergreen flavors exclusively on TikTok. That's where I would spend my money right now, because there's so many eyeballs and the algorithm's so good,
It's a great
and they flip
algorithm.
the script because before D2C brands, you might have a couple people on your creative design team, or you license it to an agency, and then you put the ads up on Facebook or Meta, and then you see what performs, you put more money behind it. TikTok's flipped it because then you have this organic content and the pool of creators that find the hooks. Or you
Yep.
give them hooks and you give them like things that you could talk about, things that you could say, and then they get really creative with it. And you get thousands of videos, some go viral, and then and then it's really changed the script where it's like now you don't have this bottleneck of trying to find creative. Now you have this like huge massive people that can do the creative for you,
Yeah.
and then people come up with some amazing things. Like
How do
it's
you guys
amazing,
think
like when
about
you're like open source, you're like open sourcing
yeah.
like the creative process.
How do you guys think about that? I was actually just on the board of a baby care company, and we were talking about influencer and kind of TikTok toolkits today. But how do you guys think about how much to give them? Like whether it's assets that they could use or scripts, or like here's some hooks you could consider, or different benefits to talk about. Like how formalized is what you provide them versus kind of letting them, authentically just talk about it themselves?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't have them say things like this is the best thing in the world for your baby. It's gonna make them the next
Yeah.
science center. I think
Right.
you have to create strict guidelines on the things that you can say, and I would always advise like making sure that they're not overstepping.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do see that, right? And those creators get taken down, and they get taken down for a good reason. You don't want them to spread
Yeah.
misinformation. So it's really important to just lay it out. And it's like anything. It's like if you're onboarding an employee, you're not going to be like, hey, all right, good luck and figure it out. Like you want to create that onboarding process as smooth as possible and be as concrete as possible. As I think it's the same thing as when you're onboarding a creator.
Yeah. That's great.
So
And
if
there's so
I,
many creators that aren't even creators. They just do it authentically now, which is
Yeah.
the best part. So you have creators that you seek out, and then now that bleeds over to just everyday people who, they're not getting paid. They just want to talk
Yeah.
about the product. And that's really where you create the virality. And I think that's how
That's
you
huge.
develop brand.
yeah, so if you're a brand trying to think about this, I think those briefs are going to be very critical. Think about them as like guardrails. So let the creator determine like which lane they're going to drive it and how fast, but you have to create the guardrails with the brief to make sure that
100%.
they're in
Yeah.
line and representing the brand at least accurately and not going to create more issues for you.
Yeah, guardrails, like bumper rows when you're bowling. You don't want them to gutter ball it. Like
Yeah.
at least hit some pins.
Yeah,
But like
Exactly.
it doesn't need to be a strike, but even if they can hit some pins, and those are the pins that you laid out for them, I think that's critical.
That's great.
I guess as we're kind of we've ripped through a number. I mean, we had a pretty robust list of questions. We've ripped through them. I mean, this has been awesome.
Amazing.
One concept that came up, talked about this with Cody, and I think maybe at one point it was you or Kent that were exchanging with him. This is going back a couple of years, but like, is it misogi? The kind of that concept of misogi,
Yeah.
and I think it's really fascinating for listeners. I might butcher it, so Ryan, you have to like keep me honest here, but it's like something you're supposed to commit to like once a year, where you have was it better than 50% chance of failing, but obviously it's like not life threatening, more or less. It's supposed to kind of create this self-selected adversity to really kind of push yourself and unlock, another level or experience. So I guess talk to us about, have you incorporated that? If you have, what have you done? And what are you kind of looking and planning on for your 2025 Misogi?
Yeah, I think it's like pushing yourself to like your limit, right? Like knowing what's possible. And I think pushing yourself to where there is that chance of failure. And I think Kent did one earlier this year. He did like his first ultra marathon. So it
Wow.
was, I think like 35 miles or something, but not like on a track. It was like in the mountains. It was like pushing his body to the limit. And he was just like, yeah, like I was just stirring up because it was just such a beautiful experience. And I think that's amazing because you should always challenge yourself to push what that limit is. I think my Misogi, 2 years ago, I just got my pilot's license. Not many paraplegics think that they can do that. And I was like, I think I can do this. And there's a program
awesome.
that now I'm so like the next step is like called IFR. It's like instrument flight rating. It's like a big step from private pilot's license. So basically it's like landing a plane just purely on instrumentation. So like if weather is completely blacked out, you can land a plane just looking at the instruments in front of you. So it's a big step in terms of like, that's a big learning curve. And I think just like pushing past that mental barrier, knowing that I can do it, trusting in like the training, is one. And yeah, I think that'd probably be my Misogi for next year. Then it's a lot of reading. So yeah.
I can imagine. I love that because I think today, I don't know, I feel society really preserves or is trying to pursue like comfort and convenience. Like, how fast can I get this to me? Can I just, I have pseudo social network where I want to be social via social media versus actually sitting across the room from someone and like breaking bread and having hard conversations or being a kind of keyboard courage. But like, pain can be a gift, and like it's the adversity that grows us and builds confidence. Like, I'm a coach for some youth soccer. It's like seeing the kid that struggles at the beginning of the season, then scoring their first goal and kind of creating that sense of self-belief. Like, oh, I did this. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
New grooves are now formed in my brain, and they're gonna be able to have that much more resilience to step into that next thing. It's like you played Madden growing up, and it's like, okay, you're an 80 overall, but then over the course of the season, now you're an 87 or an 89. Like, I think that we try to avoid discomfort and pain and adversity, but that's where we're forged and kind of build that confidence and resilience. So I follow that thread. I like love what you and Kent are doing and how you embody that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think like easy things are easy for a reason, right? And I think we do live in a world where it's very convenient. And I was listening to this thing that Charlie Munger had said, like, he was like, we're living like compared to 100 years ago, like 600% better. And that metric was like in terms of like longevity, access to modern medicine, like air travel. It's like now, like most people can get on a plane or have a car. Like that wasn't a thing like 100 years, 200 years ago. It was like, the industrial, like, and then even if we're comparing our lives 1,000 years, like lifespans were so short, right? And now we're living longer, we're living better, and there's all these convenient things. And I think what I urge everybody to do is be uncomfortable, because then you can challenge yourself and you have this sense of accomplishment that you could just do a lot more. Like life is very, very short. And I think, when Kent and I started the business, and, after me going through my accident and Kent going through other like personal things, it was like, starting business isn't life or death. And a lot of people always ask me, it's like, oh my God, what is it like starting a business? So hard. I'm like, yeah, it's hard, but it's not life or death. And if you don't try, you'll never know. And you'll leave that page in your book unturned. Like, you want to be able to turn these pages, as many pages as possible, to see like what you can accomplish in your life.
And I think, some people think the notion of like W-2 employment, like that's the only secure path. I think W-2 employment isn't always the most secure, right? Like, you could be doing everything well, but we're all fungible at the end of the day. So it's like, why don't you put yourself out there? I mean, you guys are a great example where you didn't jump in with both feet right at the outset, right? You both had your other jobs. You didn't have to go burn the boats. It was, hey, let's test this passion of ours and set a certain target. If said target is hit, then we go. And you guys did that, and you've grown into this amazing thing. So really impressed with what you guys have built. I've really enjoyed today's conversation. And I think
likewise.
If you have not tried Neuro, absolutely do it. TikTok shop. Is it neuro.com, neurogum.com?
Yeah, neurogum.com, getneuro.com, neuromints.com. We just bought them all.
That's great.
All the domains.
Yeah,
all the domains.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun. I really appreciate the time.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.